All right, we're going to get started, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We've sorted out the audio issues, so we'll get started. So I will now call the meeting to order, and for those who are able, please rise for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you, merci. As we begin our meeting today, and on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I want to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. I'm going to move to the podium now for a special presentation. Good morning once again. And in recognition of National Public Works Week, I am pleased to invite Alain Gontier, the General Manager of Public Works, and Tammy Rose, the General Manager of Infrastructure and Water Services, to come forward. Je vous invite à vous avancer ce matin à l'occasion de ce moment spécial.
Please come forward for this special occasion. I hereby proclaim this morning the National Public Works Week in Ottawa and the important work and precious services provided by our devoted staff at Public Works.
National Public Works Week, focusing on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are important, in fact, vital to our communities. Public Works professionals make an impact on our daily lives. And on behalf of the City of Ottawa, we want to thank all of the members of our teams in these areas for continually and consistently rising to the challenges that we face and working to improve city services. Au nom de la Ville d'Ottawa, je vous remercie d'avoir relevé les
On behalf of the City of Ottawa, we thank you for rising to the challenges we face and continually working to improve city services.
A proclamation that therefore I, Mark Sutcliffe, Mayor of the City of Ottawa, do hereby proclaim May 21st to the 27th, 2023, National Public Works Week in Ottawa, and I encourage all our citizens to pay tribute to our public works professionals and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our health, safety, and quality of life. So I'll present this to Alain and Tammy. Please join me in thanking Alain and Tammy and all the people who work in this area for the City of Ottawa. Thank you both. Okay, I will now ask the Deputy Clerk to please do the roll call.
Councillor Luloff.
Je suis présent.
Councillor Dudas.
Here.
Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Counselor Kavanaugh,
Present.
Counselor Johnson,
Here.
Counselor Devine,
Here.
Counselor Bradley,
Here.
Counselor Tierney, Counselor Plante,
Ici.
Counselor King,
Here.
Counselor Troster,
Here.
Counselor Leeper,
Good morning.
Counselor Brockington,
Here.
Counselor Menard,
Here.
Counselor Card,
Here.
Counselor Kitts,
Here.
Counselor DeRuse,
Here.
Counselor Brown,
Here.
Counselor DeRoche,
Here.
Counselor Hubley, Counselor Lowe,
Present.
Counselor Sutcliffe, Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, item 5, confirmation of minutes from the council meeting of May 10th, 2023. Are the minutes carried? Are there any declarations of interest? I'll note the communications from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And item 8 is response to inquiries. And I know that Councillor Brockington wants to lift that inquiry response because he has a direction for staff on that. So if it's the will of council, we'll allow that to happen. Everybody okay with that? Okay, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor and colleagues. Yes, this direction is coming out of discussion and events that happened this past winter with respect to the extreme cold that we have. And working with staff, I have the following direction. That community and social services staff be directed to release the location of shelters or other appropriate sites, such as temporary physical distancing centers, for those who need overnight support as part of initial communications about extreme weather events, recognizing that some addresses cannot be released for safety and/or legal reasons. This information will also be shared with 311, 211, and on appropriate websites so that they can also share information with the public. And this is about making warming centers, locations publicly known to people on our communication channels. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brockington. Staff is okay with that?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Item 9, regrets. As you know, Councillor Tierney is not here. He's away on business with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So motion to introduce reports. Councillor Dudas.
Thank you. That the report from the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee, Report 4, Planning and Housing Committee, Report 9, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act, Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of May 10th, 2023, be received and considered, and that the rules of procedure be suspended to receive and consider Community Services Committee, Report 3, due to the time sensitivity of the item contained in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Dudas. Is that carried?
Des
Item
services de
11
protection de
is
préparation aux
the
situations
report from
d'urgence.
Community Services
12.1,
Committee. Item 11.1
rapport
is
annuel du
Homelessness
service de
Prevention
sécurité
Program
publique, c'est
Investment
reçu.
Plan. Is that approved?
12.2, rapport annuel 21-22 sur les
Carried.
services d'appel au 911,
Okay.
c'est reçu.
Item 13.
13, comité de planification
like
et
to hold
du
it?
logement,
Okay.
modification
All
au
right, we'll
règlement
hold
de
that.
zonage pour
Sorry,
le
I didn't hear you.
180 Main.
Item 12
Adopté.
is Emergency Preparedness and Protective
13.2,
Services.
modification du règlement du
the Public
zonage,
Safety Service
2504
2021 and
rue White,
2022 Annual
adopté.
Report. Is that received?
Et 13.3, modification du
Item
règlement du
12.2 is the
zonage,
911 Annual
1568
Report for
chemin
2021 and
Meadowbrook.
2022. Is that
Adopté.
received? All right. And there were no requests to lift any-
Aucune
Item
demande n'a été
13
reçue pour
is Planning
retirer
and
un
Housing
point de l'ordre
Committee
du jour
report.
pour approbation
13.1
en
is the zoning
bloc.
bylaw amendment for 180 Main
Bien.
Street. Is that carried?
Alors, on retourne
Item 13.2 is the zoning bylaw amendment
à
for
11.1,
2504 White
programme de
Street. Is
prévention
that
de
carried?
l'itinérance. Conseillère Plante,
And item 13.3 is the zoning bylaw
Oui,
amendment
je
for
voulais
1568 Meadowbrook Road.
simplement
Is that carried?
revenir sur la discussion d'hier
All right.
au
And there
sujet
were
des
no
problèmes
requests to lift
d'itinérance que
anything
nous
from the
avons
bulk consent
dans la
agenda. So
ville
is the
et
bulk
la
consent
question
agenda
des
carried?
refuges d'urgence. C'est
Okay.
évident qu'on a besoin de plus de
So
logements
let's
de
go
soutien
back
dans la
to
ville, mais j'aimerais préciser certains des commentaires qui m'ont été faits
Item,
et qui ont été faits aussi
11.1.
pendant la réunion de comité hier.
Councilleur Plante, did
Je
you want to
comprends
speak
que les
to that?
refuges
Oui,
d'urgence
merci beaucoup. I
doivent
just wanted
servir
to sort of
comme une
follow up on
salle
some of the
d'urgence. C'est
discussion we
quelque
had
chose,
yesterday
un dernier
around
recours
the
finalement,
homelessness issue
quelque
we have in our
chose
city and our use of
où les gens ne
emergency
peuvent pas
shelters.
venir
And I'm
s'établir
glad we
pendant
are
des
sort
mois.
of coming to terms
J'aime
with
bien
this
ce qui a
idea that
été
we
dit
need to
dans
do more
le
supportive
rapport
housing
au
in and
sujet
around the
d'une
city.
solution à
But I do want to clarify
l'itinérance.
some of the
On
comments
sait
that
que les
have been
refuges
made, not
d'urgence
just to
ne sont
myself, but
pas
yesterday
une
at committee
solution. Il y a
and
déjà
some
2
things I've
enfants qui
heard
sont
around
morts dans
emergency
nos
shelters. Now, I
hôtels
understand
refuges.
emergency
Et
shelters are to be used just
on
like we would an
sait qu'il
emergency
en
room
coûte
and just like we
cher
would a food
aussi
bank. It's
au
supposed to be
système
something of a last
juridique et aux
resort. It's not supposed to be
services
someone,
d'urgence.
an
Les gens ont
individual
besoin
or
de
a family
logements de
languishes
soutien.
in for months and
On ne
months
peut
and
pas
months.
loger ces
I was a
gens
little
dans
uncomfortable with some of the wording in the
système
report, what they called an
de
emergency
refuge
shelter
seulement.
solution. We know in Ward 12 that emergency shelters are not a solution. We've had 2 children die in our
Alors voilà,
motel
c'est tout ce
shelters.
que je voulais
We have the
ajouter.
most
Merci,
calls for
Monsieur le maire.
service around our emergency shelters, whether that be paramedic, police,
Conseiller Ménard,
and fire.
merci.
And we know the
Monsieur le maire,
upstream costs
quelques
as well
questions
on our
au
legal system
personnel à
and our
ce
emergency
sujet.
rooms in and around emergency shelters.
On dit dans
People
le
need
rapport qu'en
supportive
plus
housing. People can be housed
des
in a
fonds
supportive
prévus, la
system.
ville
It's
doit
not as if
financer
our
les coûts
emergency shelters are
imprévus
some sort of
dans
lily
les
pad
hôtels
to get you to
pour des
supportive housing. We
familles.
can put high
On
acuity
a un
people
problème
into
d'audio
supportive
ici.
housing.
On vous entendait très bien au
Yeah,
début,
and
mais
that's about
voilà
it. Thank you very
qu'on
much, Mr. Mayor.
vous entend plus bien.
Thank you, Councillor Plante. Councillor Menard?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And just a couple of questions for staff on this. The report does state that in addition to the dedicated homelessness funding portfolio, the city funds unforeseen costs to pay for offsite hotels and motels for families as the family
Councillor
shelter.
Menard, sorry, we're just having an audio issue here for a moment. So Councillor Menard, hear you quite well
Yes.
initially,
Parlez de
but then
nouveau?
it got very
Oui,
quiet
c'est
all of a
mieux.
sudden. Just give us a second.
Okay.
Bien.
Moving from Councillor Plante's
Pour faire suite à la question de la conseillère Plante, le rapport dit qu'en plus des fonds prévus dans le portefeuille, la Ville devrait payer pour les frais des familles dans les hôtels et les motels, puisque les refuges débordent.
Can you try talking
Mais
again, Councillor Menard?
c'est un
Yes, how's that sound?
coût
That's better.
inconnu.
Thank
Ce
you.
n'était pas dans le
Okay,
budget
great.
de
Thanks, Mayor. I
2022.
just
Et ces frais
was
ont
off from the
rehaussé la
report
dette d'à peu près 8
moving
millions de
from
dollars, dont
Councillor
la
Plante's
moitié a été
questions.
couverte par
The
un
report states that in
financement
addition to the
du
dedicated homelessness
ministère
funding
des
portfolio, the city
services
funds
sociaux.
unforeseen costs to pay for offsite
Alors, quelle
hotels
est
and
notre
motels for
stratégie
families, as the
pour
family shelter system
réduire
is
ces
significantly
frais
over
de 8
capacity?
millions de dollars? Est-ce qu'on
That
devrait
deficit is an
acheter des
unknown
hôtels ou
cost that
des
is not
motels
part
ou
of the
d'autres
planned
logements
annual
abordables
budget. In
plutôt que
2022,
d'encourir pareille
these costs
dépenses? Et
resulted in an
combien
operating deficit of approximately
avons-nous
$8 million,
dépensé au cours des
half of
10
which was
dernières
covered by
années en
one-time provincial funding
imprévu dans les hôtels et
allocated to
motels
the
alors qu'on pourrait
Community Social
construire
Services
des logements
Department.
au lieu?
And I guess the question is, what is our strategy for,
Merci de la question,
reducing that $8 million
En effet, la
cost and
situation
actually
est très
either
complexe.
purchasing hotels
Je
or
vous dirais
motels or
que
other affordable housing
ce n'est pas,
rather than having that
il n'y a pas de
operational
solution
expense?
facile.
And how much have
On
we
investit
spent
toujours
over
dans
the
des
past
solutions
10 years on
d'urgence. En même temps,
those
notre
unforeseen
plan
hotels and motels
décennal, bien
when we could be
sûr,
building
met
that
l'accent
housing
sur
instead?
les logements de soutien et leur fonctionnement. Ça, c'est notre gros objectif. La situation du financement est évaluée année après année et c'est ce que l'on va continuer de faire avec les services financiers pour faire avancer notre plan financier à long terme, pas seulement pour les financements en immobilisation, mais bien aussi pour le fonctionnement. Et on fera un rapport au Conseil là-dessus à l'automne. Eh bien, j'encouragerai la Ville alors à penser à s'éloigner de ce modèle de solution en solution d'urgence et plutôt penser investir dans du logement abordable qui pourrait loger les gens plutôt que de nous voir jouer
model of running from emergency to emergency in terms of shelter and trying to invest those funds instead in permanent affordable housing that can house people instead of I think, benefiting hoteliers in the city to a great degree for quite a lot of expense. I think we can start to change that model here. And I think there's a lot of councillors around the table that have been speaking about that since last term as well. And I hope that we've got a strategy in place that moves the yardsticks on that issue, Mayor. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Anyone else on this? Okay, are the recommendations carried? All right, thank you. Moving to item 15, there are no in-camera items. Item 16, disposition of items approved by committees under delegated authority. Is that received? Item 17, motion to adopt reports. Councillor Dudas.
That the report from the Community Services Committee, Report 3, Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee, Report 4, Planning and Housing Committee, Report 9, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act, Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of May 10th, 2023 be received and adopted as amended.
Is that carried? Item 18 is motions of which notice has previously been given. Item 18.1 is a motion from Conseillère Plante on the 25th anniversary of Retraite en Action. Conseillère Plante.
Oui, je vais juste sur la fin. Il est donc résolu que le conseil municipal approuve l'installation d'une plaque aux rues 40 Coburg sur le terrain.
Therefore, be it resolved that we will approve the installation of a plaque, and it is further resolved that the plaque reads the 25th anniversary in French and in English.
Is the motion carried? Item 18.2 is a motion from Councillor Dudas on National Health and Fitness Day. The notice of motion was previously given on May 10th, and there have been some slight amendments to this motion, I understand. Councillor Dudas?
Yes, very slight. I'll read the therefore it be resolved and then open up to the questions if need be. Therefore, be resolved that City Council declare Saturday, June 3rd, 2023 to be National Health and Fitness Day in Ottawa, and be it further resolved that City Council approved that the city extend to adults free admission for public swimming at select city-operated swimming pools and city-operated weight and cardio rooms, as well as a free virtual Zumba class on Saturday, June 3rd, 2023 in recognition of the 2023 National Health and Fitness Day. And I expect all councillors to be on that Zumba thing, by the way. Looking at y'all.
Looking forward to that picture. Okay, is that carried? Thank you, everyone. Item 18.3 is a motion from Councillor Troster regarding Chinatown Night Market and the closure of Somerset Street West. Councillor Troster.
Thank you. Thank you for seconding my motion, Mayor. So I'll just read the therefore be it resolved. So therefore be it resolved that council approve the road closure for Somerset Street West from Bronson Avenue and Empress Street. The road closure will begin at 8 p.m. on Thursday, June 1st, 2023 and end at 5 a.m. on Monday, June 5th, 2023 for the Ottawa Chinatown Night Market, providing it meets the requirements, conditions, and approval of the Special Events Advisory Team. And I hope I see you all out there. The food is delicious. It's a really great time.
We can all do Zumba there as well. Okay, is the motion carried? Thank you. Item 18.4 is the motion from Councillor Hubley regarding waste management. And like the previous motion, there's been some amendments to this, Councillor Hubley, but go ahead and speak to this.
Okay, and I'd like to thank Councillor Brown for his work on this with me as well. So the motion reads now, whereas the City of Ottawa has declared a climate and housing emergency, and whereas the City of Ottawa is dealing with an expiring landfill, and whereas the residents of our city produce 180,000 tons of garbage a year currently, and whereas cities around the world, across the country, and even just outside our own municipal boundary have chosen to divert waste from landfill. And many of these cities are currently using various technologies such as, but not limited to, incineration and other waste diversion methods that convert waste to energy. And whereas it is prudent for the City of Ottawa to address the long-term solid waste needs of our city that both benefit residents, taxpayers, and the environment. Whereas there are numerous examples of modern, efficient, and environmentally friendly waste to energy technologies which reduce pollutants and which generate heat and electricity. And whereas the city is in the midst of developing a solid waste master plan that will set the stage to move forward with how the city's integrated waste management system will evolve over the next 30 years. And whereas the selection of technology or multiple technologies to enhance and complement the City of Ottawa's integrated waste management system will need to be grounded in fact and evidence. Therefore, be it resolved that staff report back to council as part of the draft solid waste master plan in Q4 of 2023 on recommended technology or technologies that are available in active operation and that are proven for managing and diverting municipal solid waste from landfills in comparable jurisdictions. And be it further resolved that the technology or technologies recommended to council meet or exceed all current applicable environmental regulations, and be it further resolved that staff give preference to potential solutions that could provide heat and or electricity for improving housing affordability for our residents in alignment with the solid waste master plan, council approved vision, guiding principles and goals. And finally, be it further resolved that following council's receipt of the draft solid waste master plan, staff be ready to conduct a feasibility study and business case for council's preferred alternative disposal technology, including a through market sounding to understand the various contracting models, as well as benefits and risks of the preferred approach, all of which will be presented to council as soon as practical, but no later than by the end of the 2022-2026 term of council and prior to the beginning of the new approved technology procurement process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hubley. Councillor Carr. Sorry, let's go to Councillor Menard first. Sorry.
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I hope you can hear me okay. I just have some questions for staff on the motion. It seems like a lot of misinformation is being caused by this motion. I think that's what happens when the process isn't really followed with the solid waste master plan and the committee where this is housed. It appears that some believe that an incinerator will replace the need to move forward and approve a new curbside diversion policy. Can staff please comment on that?
Mr. Mayor, in terms of regardless the technology that's selected at the end, whether it's a disposal site, whether it's an incinerator, whether it's a waste and energy facility, there will still be a requirement to increase our diversion. And I think one of the examples that we can point to is a Durham municipality that do have an incinerator that was built probably around 2016. And as part of that approval process from the ministry, there is a requirement for the city to increase its diversion target. So one doesn't negate the other. It's both elements that go hand in hand.
Great. Thanks for that clarification. And could you confirm the approximate cost of establishing an incineration or waste to energy system to process all of Ottawa's waste?
Mr. Mayor, we only have preliminary findings right now, and we'll have more detail to provide as part of the solid waste master plan in the fall. But our estimates right now would range between 300 and 450 million. So that's whether it's a landfill site, an incinerator, or waste to energy facility.
Okay. Yeah, and I understand that's the most expensive of all of the options we have in front of us, increasing taxpayer funds that would have to go to something like that in comparison to other models. Does the motion do anything that wasn't already in the staff work plan? And would it commit Ottawa to mass burn incineration or waste to energy?
I don't think that the motion as written commits the city to anything else than what we're planning on bringing forward as part of the master plan in the fall. I think what the motion does is just reinforces that this is going to be an option that council recognizes will be included as part of the solid waste master plan. So when the plan comes forward, it won't be as a surprise to council to see the suite of options that's going to be presented to them at the time.
Okay, thanks for that. And I mean, I know the solid waste master plan did speak about this already. It recognizes that an option is to explore implementing short-term measures like tag a bag, or recognizing the need to invest in a new landfill or alternative residuals management technology over the medium and longer term. So I know we've done that. It seems clear to me that this motion is redundant. It's just for show and not accomplishing much, unfortunately. So, happy that it's going to be referred back to staff for the process they were already undertaking. Looking forward to the discussions, which was already going to occur as part of the process that we've set out in place in the solid waste master plan. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Carr?
Yes, thanks very much for bringing us forward. I appreciate the opportunity for discussion that it's created, and certainly the introduction of this topic has generated discussion and provided an extremely healthy boost to my email volumes. I do believe that Councillor Menard covered off the question that I was seeking with respect to whether or not we would still require the proposed curbside waste diversion options that are presented. And my understanding from that is yes. I just have a clarification question on that. My understanding of the curbside waste diversion options were that they were both an effort to not only increase our recycling for environmental purposes, decrease the trail road, the airspace at trail road, but also because there were provincial targets that needed to be met as part of diversion. If we were to move forward with an incineration or other option, would we still need to meet those provincial targets?
Mr. Mayor, there's no indication right now that the province would move away from the targets. The province already has targets when it comes to organics. They're basically expecting municipalities to achieve a 70% diversion for organics. The city still falls short of that target. And as indicated, the most recent example is Durham Region, and Durham Region, as part of their approval process, there is a requirement as part of the approval that they continue to increase their diversion rate. So as I mentioned before, one doesn't negate the other. It's not one or the other, it's really both that need to go hand in hand. Because the benefit of increasing diversion is regardless of what the technology is going to be at the end, whether it's a landfill, waste to energy, or incinerator, increasing the diversion targets will reduce those operating costs.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Lowe?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. This question's for staff. I know the approval of a new landfill or any expansion of landfill probably takes about 10 years, I believe it was. Are you aware of what sort of timeline Durham Region had to go through to get their incinerator from start to finish to operational?
I don't have the specific timeline. I believe Shelley McDonald's on the line, so if she has the information, I'll ask her to convey that level of detail.
Good morning. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Based on our information, we believe that Durham, it took between 8 and 10 years to have their facility operational.
Okay, thanks very much. One of the concerns I have based on some of the discussion that we've been having is I think the cost of a new landfill is significantly more expensive than an incinerator. And even though there is an envelope within which all the options fall, a landfill is definitely the most environmentally damaging and the heaviest impact in terms of budget. I grew up in a town that introduced a bag limit. And I know part of the big discussion here is introducing the bag limit. I grew up in a town that had that, and they introduced an effective recycling and composting service alongside with the bag tag and a limit. And in the end, it was actually the effective recycling and composting that actually drove diversion rates up, not the bag tag. And the city of Markham actually eliminated their bag limit and bag tag by the mid-2010s because of that. So I'm more in favor of nudging our residents towards improving their diversion rather than imposing ourselves upon them. And I think it's worth exploring alternate ways of increasing our diversion and improving the way we manage our waste rather than simply placing the onus on our residents all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a lot of concern about incineration. It's basically sending pollutants up in smoke. I'm very concerned, and I saw that in our report, Waste Management, that staff feel the same and they've expressed the concerns. It's also a hefty cost with over 300 million and taking up to 15 years to be fully operated. I have no expertise in science, but I happen to give birth to someone who is got a PhD in atmospheric chemistry. So I asked them, and they said anything you send up in the air stays there. It's not a good option. It makes it sound easy, and frankly, I think it'll discourage people from diversion. They'll think that, oh, don't have to worry about it. It's just going to be burned up. So I have a lot of hesitancy in anything about incineration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Dudas.
So I have a question. Well, I have two questions for staff. Will residents ever be able to divert enough to completely negate the need for somewhere to store our garbage, whether that be a landfill or an incinerator or some other source?
Mr. Mayor, I think the straight answer is no. There will always be a requirement for landfill, as much as we're encouraging residents to separate their waste, divert, increase recycling, increase the use of organics. There's always going to be residual waste that we have to manage. So there's always going to be a need for an endpoint, whether it's a landfill, incinerator, or waste to energy facility.
So we are about to go into a conversation at committee, of which I'm not part of, but I will be attending, in which we're going to be talking about asking residents to do more, to cut back, to recycle more. All of these things, my sense is that residents are willing to accept, but they also want to know that the city has a long-term plan, that whether it is another landfill, nobody wants to say those words, but you're saying, and it's true, we might have to look at it, or incineration, or some actual permanent solution to what we do with the leftover waste. So in respect to this particular motion, I fully agree with it. It's asking staff to look at it, to fully investigate. And this leads to my other question is, I recall, this was before my time a little bit, but I recall the conversations with, it was Plasco Energy. My understanding is Plasco Energy went into creditor default, and the city had ended its relationship with that. I'm not asking you to talk about that end, that, project, that business relationship, but has city staff or the city, in a true sense, investigated the option of an incinerator since that time? Have you done the legwork to see if it was a viable option since that deal fell through?
Mr. Mayor, I'll start with the answer, and then if Shelley McDonald has any additional information to share, I'll ask her to step in. So I'm not aware that since Plasco that we've done anything, I would say concrete in terms of incinerator or other technologies, but through the solid waste master plan, we have been doing a review of all suite of technologies, and that will be tabled as part of the report this fall, because the master plan is really around the 30-year horizon related to how we manage our waste. So that suite of option will definitely be part of that process.
So we as a city once before thought that incineration was a viable option, so much so that we almost went to the nth degree of having this business relationship and building it. I think that it's prudent for us to look at all options as part of the solid waste master plan. The timing is impeccable. In addition to just asking residents to do more, to go to the nth degree, we as a city need to provide leadership and say we've turned over every stone and looked at every option for a permanent viable solution to our waste disposal. So I am very much in favor of this motion, and I would encourage my colleagues to support it as well as one of the tools in our toolbox in dealing with a sustainable option to our solution, to our waste problem.
Thank you, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Would staff please clarify the timelines of the life cycle of our current main landfill. What is the date's been bouncing around the last few years, but what's the exact timeline right now today if we continue doing exactly what we're doing now?
Mr. Mayor, we're looking at a range right now. The latest estimates that we had varied between 2036 and 2038, but recognizing that that could vary year to year depending on how much waste we're sending to the landfill.
So, you know, that's not that far from now. And remind us again, when does a final decision need to be made on how we're going to deal with the end of the day, the end of the landfill? When do we have to actually make a decision?
So, Mr. Mayor, the draft solid waste master plan is going to be tabled in the fall, with the final plan being approved by council in early 2024. And at that point, that will set the directions for the next steps around direction to staff related to the longer term siting of whatever technology is being used. At that point, it's going to be done in light of other options that we're going to be presenting to council around how can we try to extend the life of the existing landfill. So council will have full visibility around the different options that are available.
Yeah, I completely agree that that suite of options must be focused on reducing the amount of garbage that's produced, but also will there be an option that says we recommend a new landfill be built?
I'm not going to presuppose basically what's going to be in the master plan. At this point, I think it's realistic to expect that in that 30-year time frame, we will have far surpassed basically the capacity at Trail Road. So there are other options that we need to be looking at. So that's why I was saying that the motion as presented is in alignment with the solid waste master plan, just helps to reinforce the fact that we will be looking at different technologies before we come back to council.
Yeah, I appreciate my colleague who raised the Plasco. That's the word I have on my report, Councillor Carr. But when I arrived at the council table, the Plasco matter was basically winding down, and I was not privy to those preliminary discussions. So I don't know if it was a completely private sector led initiative, whether the city was looking for a partnership, whether the city was reviewing options including consideration and we had called for proposals. But I think it would be useful as a takeaway to provide basically a historical outline for members of council on that deal so we could have a better understanding of what happened and why that deal fell through. I also think it would be wise for staff if this motion passes and talks about the feasibility to give us some background and information on what other jurisdictions who are in similar circumstance across the world are doing. Are they agreeing to build new landfills in their own backyards, or are they looking to incineration or other options to deal with their waste? And yes, there are many options to reduce and divert waste, but as you even admit, Mr. General Manager, we will still have waste that has to go somewhere at some point. So what are cities and other jurisdictions who are in a similar position as us that have to make a decision of whether or not they build a new landfill or not doing around the world? What are they deciding on? Because this is a once in every 50, 100-year decision. And so what are modern day cities doing with respect to their waste as far as those big decisions? As part of the waste management plan, we talk about the need to make blue bin, black bin, green bin mandatory. Wouldn't that be great if people didn't put this type of waste in their garbage to the landfill? The need for multi-unit buildings to have organic waste collection, and a huge missing gap in this province, the ICIs, the industrial, commercial, and institutional that don't have to recycle. There's no requirement for these sectors to recycle, so a lot of waste going to the landfill. Like other speakers, I don't want to close any doors on options before us, and I do believe it's wise to at least conduct this feasibility study to get this information to feed into the decisions that we're going to be forced to make, or not forced, but to look at next year and ultimately need to make some decisions. And that's why I believe it's wise to support the motion before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Mayor. So although the motion does feel somewhat unnecessary because it seems like it's leading us down a path that staff is already headed down, I am generally supportive of the motion because it does speak to an urgency and a clear path of action to determine the best options for our future, and because it does reignite the discussion about the long-term plan. And I have been studying proven existing successful models for incineration worldwide, whether it's the industry leader Copenhagen in Denmark or the expansion of a facility in PEI. So I do believe that there could be solutions out there for that kind of model. But like some of my colleagues have addressed, I want to make sure that if we pass this motion here today, we're not predetermining the outcome of next week's debate. I do believe we need to consider technology-based alternative solutions to landfill, but we also need to reduce the amount of garbage we produce as a city that ends up in our landfill. We need to do both. And like Alain Gontier just said, the two solutions need to go hand in hand. I don't want us to fall into the trap of believing that technology is the only solution to this problem. Changing human behavior needs to be part of the solution. What we have with the Hubley-Brown motion is the possibility for a technological solution, and what we have with the pay-as-you-throw policy addresses our behavior as residents in terms of waste reduction. We need both technology and a greater effort from residents to make this work. I see these two initiatives as complementary solutions to a common goal, and I just don't want to see the adoption of this solution here be meant as a way to ignore or delay the necessity of the other. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor DeBruce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to talk about the report. We're going to leave it for next week, but I have a couple of questions to staff, Mr. Gontier and Ms. McDonald. In July 2019, we did approve the solid waste master plan. Am I missing something on that, or am I correct on this?
Sir, Mr. Mayor, can you repeat the question? It's difficulty understanding the question.
In July 2019, Council approved for us to go out and look at the solid waste master plan. Correct?
That's correct. That's one, yes.
So we've been out since 2019. You came to our communities and we've done public consultation. And you heard it from our resident and you said it, that every option is on the table, and you're telling me today that you haven't looked at any of these options, other than Durham, by the way. You keep bringing Durham, but there is many other technology that work, but our city, I guess, stuck on the Durham example.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, so yes, since 2019, we have been working on the solid waste master plan. We've provided council with two update reports. The master plan was undertaken in 3 phases. Phases 1 and 2 have already been submitted to the last term of council. So what we're into now is phase 3, which is basically the last phase of the solid waste master plan. As part of that process, yes, there was extensive public engagement, probably one of the most extensive engagement process that we've had. And as part of that, we've also looked at different technologies that are available. So yes, we have been proceeding on that basis. The only reason why I brought back Durham was just because it's a more recent example. It's one that's close to home, and it's one that just reinforces that even as part of an incinerator project, there's still a requirement to increase diversion. But there's many other examples that we're also going to be able to include. Durham is only one of many that we've been looking into.
No, and I appreciate it. And the reason is I like that motion because it enforces that we need to look at different technology. We have technology in Copenhagen. Councillor Devine just mentioned that. Germany, they generate 5% of their energy through incinerator. And we're not only saying about incinerator, there is multiple other technology that could be used. And I'm hoping that this motion will enforce that, because we need to look at solution and not, no one's saying we need a landfill. And our resident really, we keep talking about diversion. Have you looked at how we are operating our landfill, because in 2017, in 2007, our landfill was supposed to have lifetime till 2046. And now, right now, you're telling me we have 2036 and 2034, whatever the case it is. Where does that 10-year happen? And you can't tell me that our resident, and we're shaming our resident that are not doing diversion, because if you drive around our city, our residents are very responsible. And I personally think before you go out and look at the resident, telling them they're not doing a job by shaming them and telling them their diversion is not right, I think you should look into your operation personally. What happened to that 10-year we keep talking about, and where is the time gone? So personally, Mr. Mayor, I think before we go out and start telling the public they're not doing their job and they're not diverting, we should look at our landfill, how we are managing it. And then we need to look at all these examples, and we've been talking about for 3 years. And we come out and we're talking to the resident about how they're gonna put their garbage on the curb. Seriously, this is not a good conversation for our taxpayer and our resident. And talking about cost. Okay, I heard that someone's talking about the cost. We borrowed $1 billion to build an LRT system to serve some of our residents. And people forget, councilors, you are responsible. Garbage is core services, and our responsibility is to pick up the garbage. It's one of our mandate for the city of Ottawa residents. So if we have to borrow money to build it, and then we keep using example as a Plascos and other technology that they don't work, you know what? There is so many other technology that does work, and I don't like to be a guinea pig of any technology. Let's find technology that doesn't work, and that's what this motion demonstrates. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor DeRuz. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I, like many of my colleagues, have very significant concerns about going down the path toward incineration. The credible assertions that we see over and over again are significantly increased greenhouse gas emissions and of air pollution. And both of those are existential threats. They are the wrong direction for this city to go down. But I have also been urged to be open-minded by residents to understanding the technologies and getting the information. So before I support this motion today, I would just ask staff, do you consider that this motion sets us down a path toward incineration as a preferred option in the solid waste master plan? I'm looking at some of the post recommendation steps around building business case, viability studies, feasibility studies. If we pass this motion today, do you as staff consider that council is signaling its intention to go down the path of incineration?
Mr. Mayor, no, I don't read that into the motion. What I read into the motion is that council would want us to ensure that basically we review those alternatives as part of the solid waste master plan before we come back to you in the fall, which is what we're planning on doing. At this point, we're not committing to a final outcome. We're committing to a process and a level of awareness around what's going to be included as part of that process in the fall. Really, that's when the decisions will be made, is when the solid waste master plan is presented. All of the options are presented to you. At that point, that's when we will be seeking basically a direction in terms of how to move forward, but not at this point with the motion itself.
Will that report and recommendations come with fairly clear and rigorous comparisons of things like air pollutants and of greenhouse gas emissions from various different alternatives?
Mr. Mayor, we're going to be try to be as comprehensive as we can with the data that's available out there, so that in our recommendations and the options that are presented to council, that you have the fullness of the information that's available.
Okay. I'll leave it there. Mayor, I'm tentative about this motion because I believe that many of my colleagues believe that incineration is the correct direction in which to go. This motion speaks in the whereas clauses to some of the advantages of technologies that I don't necessarily agree with. Makes assertions about technologies that I don't necessarily agree with. And the risks of getting it wrong are so huge. at a point where we are facing an existential threat from air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. That has to be our primary focus. But I am looking forward to getting the analysis that staff bring back to us, and I would ask them to be as rigorous and clear as science allows with respect to a comparison of those different options. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Hubley, I was going to go to you last as the mover of the motion, if you're okay with that.
If you go to me last, then is that just wrap up? Because I have questions. So that's why I put my hand up, is to ask the questions now and then do the wrap up after.
But you already had the point at which you introduced the motion. That would have been the time to do
When
that.
I moved the motion, you wanted me to ask my questions at that point?
That would normally be your time, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll wait for
But
it.
you can do it at the end. Councillor Luloff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I really do appreciate the good discussion today. A lot of people with open minds on this, and I appreciate that very much. You know, we really do need to stop fooling ourselves. You know, this is an issue that's going to catch up with us, and we've been avoiding it for 12 years. You know, we can stick our heads in the sand now, or we can look at some real possible solutions to this problem. I recommend that we go with the latter. You know, bringing a new and expensive program online to extend the life of the landfill for 2 years is really not a progressive policy, nor is it acceptable to most residents. That's why this motion is good. We need a long-term plan, and saddling residents with a new tax is not a long-term plan. It may suit our needs in the short term, but it's not a long-term plan. And make no mistake, if you give solid waste management a new revenue stream, it'll never go away. We'll be stuck with a policy that will disproportionately punish larger families and poorer families. There are other issues like illegal dumping and burning. I'll save that for the later debate at Environment Committee. But the technology is out there. It's being used in Newark, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in Fort Myers, Florida, in Dickerson, Maryland, in Vienna, Austria, in Malmo. I'll talk about that one in a minute. In Brampton, in Stoke-on-Trent, in Chester, in the United States, in Middlesbrough, in Greater London, in Metro Vancouver, in New Delhi. There's loads of examples where there's good technology for waste to energy. We're not talking about incineration. It's a bit of a waste. We're talking about waste to energy, like the SYSAV waste to energy plant, which I've got a resident by the name of Bernie James that calls me every month to talk to me about this plant. So I hope he's listening. It is the most energy efficient plant in Sweden, and as well as it's the most advanced plant in the world. The plant includes 4 boilers, and the first 2 of which began operation in 1973. This has been an option since 1973. The 2 advanced boilers were fitted in 2003 and 2008, and they're steam boilers that generate electricity and district heating. And so through this, they've also set up, you know, they haven't just concentrated on this. They've set up an area to process, sort, store, and recycle waste as well. So specific examples include sorting bulky waste, composting, chipping wood, recovering metals as well, and reloading. The site was originally designed as a landfill, but only a small portion of the waste actually goes into landfill at the 2 sites. They include facilities to process household and commercial waste, using waste combustion to recover energy, biological treatment for reuse, recycling, and then the small landfill instead for waste that can't be used in any of the other processes. So coupled with adjacent greenhouses, we could be using the excess heat created to grow trees, plants, and other landscaping features without much cost to taxpayers. We could be doing that year round, so we don't have to be buying these things. We could be growing them ourselves. We could save a lot of money with a solution like this, and we can offset costs as well. That's what a progressive solution looks like. Simply kicking the can down the road, you know, with bag tags or clandestinely raising taxes is not a progressive solution. We can do better. And let's find out what better looks like. Let's abandon our ideology for a moment, be open-minded, and better yet, let's be explicit about the fact that we want to be open-minded. And that's exactly what this motion does. So let's get the information that and be explicit about the information that we want, and make a considered decision instead of tying ourselves down with what looks like a short-term solution, but will actually just be a long-term tax on that will disproportionately affect large families and people without means to pay the extra. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to start off by thanking my colleague, Councillor Hubley, for his partnership on this and for staff support in drafting this motion. I know Councillor Hubley and I wish to be very clear that there's no misinformation contained in this motion. In fact, its goal is to be as public as possible with solutions that could help us address the current needs to divert waste, but also ensure that we have a long-term solution that will solve our waste problems. I know that some colleagues have concerns about one technology over another, which is why this motion is very broad. We want to ensure that every option is on the table, that we have command of all of the facts in the fall when we look at the updated solid waste master plan. Everything needs to be on the table so we can have an open and honest dialogue with our residents, our communities, and our colleagues around the council table. I guess my one question to staff, do we have any data that compares a waste to energy option to a landfill when it comes to GHG emissions?
I'll ask Shelley McDonald if she has that information available.
Thank you for the question. So through the master plan, we'll be looking at that and we'll be presenting that back to committee and council's review in the fall.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I also want to be clear from my perspective, and the current landfill is in my ward. And I want to make sure that in the fall, when council begins to make a decision on how best to move Ottawa forward, we're not looking at expanding or creating a new landfill. Because I doubt there is any political will around this table from any of my colleagues to put their hand up and say, don't worry, Councillor Brown, I'll take the next landfill. And so I know that I need to be able to step up, and my community is prepared to step up and say, we are willing to take a progressive technological solution to address the city's needs. I think that's responsible. I think it's practicable. And I think at the end of the day, that's what residents are going to expect. We don't want to say not in my backyard, but let's go forward with something. I'm saying my community is ready to take a progressive solution and implement it at, I would prefer, the Trail Road Waste facility or another suitable site. I also know that any solution is unlikely to be cited in urban Ottawa, which means rural Ottawa will have to step up and bear this brunt, which is why my interest and desire is finding a solution that will work for us all around the table. Again, Mr. Mayor, I think this is timely. We've heard from staff that this is in line with the current pathway that we're on. It helps provide that clarity of language around the process. And I'm excited to see the options that will come forward in the fall. So I do encourage my colleagues to support the motion. It is purely for informational purposes. We are not asking for a decision to be decided upon today. Rather, we are asking for the facts to come forward so we can make an informed decision that will affect our city for the next few decades. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I'd like to sincerely thank both Councillor Hubley and Councillor Brown for bringing this forward. Councillor Brown does have the municipal landfill in his ward. I have one in mine as well. So we, it's not a municipal one, it's a private one, but it's still a constant reminder of how quick waste builds up and the need to manage it in a more efficient fashion and use it to our advantage. So I think there's a lot of tools to look at and use. There's and I would like to also point out that the waste to energy is not a new concept, and we're actually already doing it at both of those landfills. We're just not using incineration as the tool to do it right now. So I think looking at different options is prudent, and I don't see this as some sneaky motion to stop any diversion efforts from happening. I think that this is just asking staff to look into options, which I think is great. And I want to thank the movers for doing that. So much appreciated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, like so many of my colleagues, think we need to explore these options. So I will be supporting the motion, and I do understand that this work was already underway by staff. Personally, I'm very interested to learn more about this specific technology, but for the sake of our email volumes, I do hope the public and the media are hearing that we did not make a decision today. We are just requesting more information. I do have a question though. Councillor DeRue's hinted at this, but a 2007 report to the then Planning and Environment Committee said that the revised trail road facility site life was approximately 42 years, assuming baseline 2006 tonnage, or 39 years with increased tonnage. So 2007 plus 39, taking the higher of the two, would have given us 2046. A solid waste roadmap in 2019 also said 2046. Then in 2021, the annual monitoring update, the life expectancy dropped to 2036. And I know that a recent memo from Public Works cited the same figure. So I'm just wondering if you could unpack what's contributed to the loss of 10 years between 2019 and 2021. It seems like there was a big shift in our math.
Yeah, I'll start with the answer and then I'll ask Shelley McDonald to step in with the details. I think one thing to appreciate is the level of technology being used to be able to assess basically the remaining airspace capacity that's available at the landfill site. And that certainly has improved over time, which means that basically some of the projections have also shifted accordingly. Plus waste continues to be consumed every single day at the landfill. So that is also subject to the amount of waste that we're taking in. But I'll let Shelley elaborate a bit more on the specifics.
Hi, thank you for the question. And Councillor, we are welcome the opportunity to sit with you to explain in greater detail. Over time, regulatory changes change as well, which had require us to close certain stages of the landfill earlier than what it would have been previously anticipated when those approvals had taken place. And you can appreciate landfills are very dynamic environments, recognizing that depending on the weather conditions, as well as depending on some of the environmental factors that come into play, plays a part in how we place waste, as well as the timing for when those cells need to close. So it is a continual evolution. We are doing things in order to try to make the most of the current airspace that we have available to us. Doing things like shredding waste, doing things by using different types of machines to compact the material, and also looking at, as part of the master plan, incorporating new diversion options, so then that way there can be other places to bring some of bulky waste as opposed to landfilling them. But as mentioned, dynamics, or the landfill is a very dynamic environment. Happy to sit with you to kind of go through that at your leisure.
Thank you, Shelley. I think there's probably a lot of interest around the table in this. So could I perhaps have a direction to staff to maybe prepare a memo on sort of what happened there between 2019 and 2021 to shift that figure? Would that be fair?
We could take that direction away, Chair or Mayor.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kitts. Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to all the staff that prepared the work, not just for this motion, but also for the broader discussion we're going to have next week, and to my colleagues for a good debate on this topic today. Just a very specific question to staff. I know that solid waste management is not a unique problem to the City of Ottawa, and I just want to ensure that in the process of looking at this over the next 4 to 6 months, that we're going to be looking at the possibility of options to share the burden with other municipalities as well. For example, Gatineau, Montreal, Kingston, other places that are also having solid waste management, issues going forward, because perhaps there could be a sharing arrangement.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can just comment on that. The staff have been working on this for probably the past 4 years in terms of the solid waste master plan. And as part of that process, there has been a lot of engagement with other municipalities, other organizations, to really better understand basically how they're managing their waste, some of the options that they've looked at. Even in Ontario, we're part of the Regional Public Works organization that has basically some of the key municipalities across the city. And there is a solid waste subcommittee as part of that, of which Shelley co-chairs that committee. So there is a lot of engagement to understand what others are doing and what synergies may be available. And those are all part of the learnings that we're going through and that we're going to be reporting back to council in the fall.
Thank you very much. And just to be clear, I know that from an Ontario perspective, there's a lack of an invisible boundary there, but are there options to look at partnering with Gatineau or with Quebec partners as well, or is that barrier just too big?
I think there's always partnership opportunities. I think when we start crossing boundaries, things get a lot more complicated because of legislative requirements, but certainly in Ontario, there's certainly options that are on the table. And you've seen even last year when we had GFL approach the city with, they were having issues at their landfill. They required basically the use of our landfill on a temporary basis, and then we reciprocate afterwards. I think there's some of that understanding as part of that. And also when we bring forward this master plan, the whole issue around the use of private landfills is also going to be part of the mix in terms of should that be part of the solution moving forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gontier and your whole team. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Hubley, did you want to wrap up on this?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, I just want to clear up some information here that's been put on the table. This motion, if you read it in its entirety, what we are asking for, what Councillor Brown and I are asking for, is for staff to provide more information about all the options. We didn't zero in on incineration. You know, just outside our municipal boundary in the Empire area, they're using steam instead of incineration. So there's other choices out there for us. What we want by this motion is we're asking for staff to give us all the choices so that council can make an informed decision. So I've got some concerns with some of the information that's put out there to try to encourage people not to vote for this motion. One of which is the cost of landfill versus incineration. We know there's a huge difference. And guess what? The most expensive one is landfill. There's probably close to, I think staff would agree, it's somewhere between 50 and $100 million likely the difference between incineration and landfill. The other thing is, what's the cleanest technology? We know Durham, for example, that has an incinerator in Ontario now operating and licensed. There's also Emerald, and the federal government have 76 different incinerators operating in the country right now. But let's take Durham. They have to report every day on what's in their stacks, how clean they are. There's a threshold as to how high they can go. They never go near that high level as far as I've ever seen in the reports. But the reporting out of Durham is that it's 95% cleaner than landfill. So anybody trying to tell you stick with landfill, it's cleaner, they're really, they probably have some swampland they want to sell you as well. It's misleading. We have to take in, I'm a big believer in evidence-based decision-making. That's why I want to see this information in the fall and we can talk about it. We worked on this motion. Some suggest that the motion's misleading. It's not. We worked with staff to put this together. It's questions. There's no statements of facts in there that anybody could say is misleading. Again, that's a strategy to try to take support away from the motion. But one of the parts of this motion that I reluctantly agreed to is the last part, which says that they can have the whole term to report back. To me, that's an attempt to push this to another term of council. I've been here since 2010 with Councillor Tierney, and we've watched this over and over again. We will keep being told, we're going to report back, and guess what? You'll get that report right in the middle of the next election, and it won't be your council that decides. So again, this gets bumped. As Councillor Kitts pointed out, we're up against a deadline. If we make this decision in the next year ourselves to say, okay, we want to go with, let's pick A, B, C, D, or F that they present to us. If we want to go to a different option, we can set the rules of that now. It will be us as the council of the city with I would say by the reaction so far from the public, the citizen just did a survey saying 84% support us looking at other options. So if you want to be on the side of your residents and your community, you've got to look at other options here. We've got to push the timetable. My hope is that when this report comes back in the fall, that we as a council will make a decision that we want to try a route, and then, and only then, will we sit with staff and try to figure out how to tighten up that timeline so that maybe we can be the council that makes the decision on how to handle waste for the future of this city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope council will support this. I think I've covered off all my points here, and maybe staff can confirm that this report is about lots of other options besides incineration or landfill. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hughley. All right, is the motion carried?
Carried.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. So we have 5 motions that I'm aware of that require suspension of the rules of procedure, almost all because of the time-sensitive nature of the motions. So first is a motion from Councillor Troster regarding Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. That I understand that's going for second reading before our next council meeting in provincial legislature, that is. So on suspension of the rules, is that carried? Councillor Troster?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I read the motion, I don't need to remind council why we need this bill to be passed in the Ontario legislature after shameful, abusive actions by a former member of City Council. I even had one of the former victims of this treatment write to me to thank me and Councillor Kavanaugh for bringing this motion forward. Right now, there's absolutely no mechanism for a City Council to have real consequences for someone who is found to have engaged in this kind of horrendous, disrespectful, abusive conduct towards a member of the public or a member of city staff. So, whereas on November 25th, 2020, in response to 2 reports from the City of Ottawa Integrity Commissioner identifying issues of harassment at Ottawa City Hall, Ottawa City Council passed motion 44/4, seeking revisions to the Municipal Act 2001 that would provide for the vacating of the seat of a member of council who has been found on clear and convincing evidence to have committed serious misconduct, including any definitions necessary for the implementation of such a provision. And whereas on August 10th, 2022, Ottawa MPP Stephen Blais reintroduced Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act 2022, to amend the Municipal Act 2001 and the City of Toronto Act 2006 to help stop harassment and abuse by local leaders. And whereas Bill 5 passed first reading on August 10th, 2022, and whereas on October 6, 2022, with Ottawa City Council support, the Mayor wrote to the Premier of Ontario to support of Bill 5 and asked that the Government of Ontario fast-track the approval of the legislation and that a letter of support be sent to local MPPs, MPP Stephen Blais, the Premier, and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And whereas on November 9th, 2022, Ottawa City Council received a report from the City of Ottawa Integrity Commissioner, which identified additional incidents of workplace harassment and which found a contravention of the section of the Code of Conduct pertaining to discrimination and harassment. And whereas all employees are entitled to a safe and healthy workplace, and whereas the City of Ottawa's commitment to preventing, protecting against, and addressing workplace violence and harassment is enshrined in the Workplace Violence and Harassment Policy, and whereas Bill 5 would require codes of conduct for council and its local boards to include a requirement that members comply with workplace violence and harassment policies established by the municipality or its local boards, and whereas the amendments under Bill 5 would also permit municipalities and local boards to direct the Integrity Commissioner to apply to the court to vacate a member's seat if the commissioner's inquiry determines that the member contravened the code of conduct by failing to comply with the workplace violence or harassment policies. Whereas it is estimated that over 100 municipalities and Ontario's big city mayors have formally endorsed Bill 5. And whereas the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the Rural Ontario Municipalities Association have expressed to the provincial government their support for legislation to update municipal codes of conduct to, among other matters, incorporate measures included in Bill 5. Therefore, be it resolved that Ottawa City Council requests that the Mayor write to the Premier of Ontario to express support of Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act 2022, on behalf of the 2022 to 2026 Ottawa City Council, and that the letter also be sent to all local MPPs, including Stephen Blais, as well as the Minister of Municipal Affairs and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Is the motion carried?
Carried.
Next, we have a motion from Councillor Troster regarding Italian Festival. On suspension of the rules, is that carried? Councillor Troster?
Much more lighter fare. Whereas the Preston Street Business Improvement Association will host the annual Italian Festival, and whereas many of the Italian Festival activities will be happening outdoors on Preston Street between Carling Avenue and Somerset Street West, and the Ferrari demonstration zone will be taking place on Carling between Preston Street and Sherwin Drive. Activities consist of outdoor on-street patios, Italian car displays, and various other forms of entertainment. And whereas the BIA has requested the closure of Preston Street from Carling Avenue to Somerset Street West, the road closure will begin at 4 p.m. on Friday, June 9th, 2023, and end at 5 a.m. on Monday, June 12th, 2023. The road will reopen each morning at 1 a.m. and reclose at 9 a.m. each day. And whereas the BIA has requested a single lane reduction in each direction on Carling Avenue from Preston Street to Sherwood Drive, beginning at 2 a.m. on Friday, June 9th, 2023, to make necessary preparations for the Ferrari demonstration. And whereas the City of Ottawa Special Events Streets Bylaw 2001-260 prohibits road closures and lane reductions before 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. Therefore be it resolved that Council approve the road closure for Preston Street from Carling Avenue to Somerset Street West and single lane reductions on Carling Avenue between Preston Street and Sherwood Drive. The Preston Street road closure will begin at 8 p.m. on Friday, June 9th, 2023, and end at 5 a.m. on Monday, June the 12th, 2023. And single lane reductions in each direction on Carling Avenue will begin at 2 a.m. on Friday, June 9th, 2023, to prepare for the Ferrari demonstration zone, providing both components meet the requirements, conditions, and approval of the Special Events Advisory Team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Is the motion carried? Next is a motion from Councillor Bradley regarding Seniors Month on suspension of the rules. Is that carried? Councillor Bradley?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to bring this motion forward today to recognize the incredible contributions of seniors in our community. I'll read out the motion, which is seconded by Councillor Brockington. Whereas Canadian demographics indicate that seniors are one of the fastest growing population groups in our communities, and whereas according to the 2021 census from Statistics Canada, 172,150 persons aged 65 and over reside in the City of Ottawa, making up 16.9% of the total population, and it's expected that by the year 2031, more than 1 in 5 residents living in Ottawa will be over the age of 65. And whereas the City of Ottawa has benefited from the many tireless hours of volunteer work and leadership generously donated by local senior citizens, and whereas senior citizens have helped to build our communities through active living, shared knowledge, and a diversity of experiences, and whereas the month of June is recognized by the province of Ontario as Seniors Month, therefore be it resolved that Ottawa City Council declare June 2023 to be Seniors Month in the City of Ottawa.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Is the motion carried? Next is a motion from Councillor Lowe regarding appointing Councillor Brown to the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, whose next meeting is coming up shortly. So on suspension of the rules, is that carried? Councillor Lowe?
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the City of Ottawa is currently eligible to appoint 5 members to the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, the RVCA Board of Directors, in accordance with the Conservation Authorities Act. Whereas there is a pending vacancy on the board that is required to be filled by a member of council, and whereas the Office of the City Clerk has circulated for expressions of interest from members of council, and Councillor Brown has expressed interest in being appointed to the RVCA Board of Directors, therefore be resolved that council approve the appointment of Councillor David Brown to the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority Board of Directors.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for putting your name forward for this. Is the motion carried? Finally, a motion from Councillor Leeper on a mural, and it should actually read at 1088 Somerset Street West, not Wellington Street West, so Somerset Street West, on suspension of the rules. Is that carried? Councillor Leeper?
Thank you. And colleagues, I wrote to you about this yesterday afternoon. You're only allowed to paint one building, one wall of a building, but they're seeking to paint all 4. So I'll just move to the therefore be it resolved. And just quickly note that late yesterday, I also spoke to the BIA, who are wholly supportive of this as well. So therefore be it resolved that council approve an exemption to the Ottawa mural bylaw for the application submitted by the Urban Art Collective to allow for murals to be painted on all 4 walls, external walls of the building, for which the application has been submitted, 1088 Somerset Street West, and be it further resolved that the applicants will otherwise adhere to the conditions of their permit as set out by the Ottawa mural bylaw. That's it. Oh, that's it.
That is it.
Is that it? That's it. I thought there were like 4 clauses. Awesome.
Is the motion carried? Thank you. Item 20, notices of motion for consideration at a subsequent meeting. There is a notice of motion from Councillor Brockington. Councillor Brockington, thank you for advancing this motion on my behalf. As members of council will know, some of you will know, we hosted the ambassador from the Ukraine to Canada, Yulia Kovalev, at the mayor's breakfast last week. And at that time, we announced that we would be making this motion. She had requested of me in a courtesy call to my office a couple of months ago that if the city of Ottawa wanted to help the people of Ukraine, we could provide decommissioned emergency vehicles to them. So this is the first step toward that, of providing a decommissioned ambulance to support humanitarian efforts in the Ukraine. So Councillor Brockington, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly honored to move this. Whereas the City of Ottawa has previously donated surplus ambulances to specific causes or organizations, such as the Salvation Army Community and Emergency Response Team, the Government of Nunavut, as well as organizations doing work in Ghana and Ethiopia. Whereas the Embassy of Ukraine has expressed the need for a decommissioned ambulance to support their humanitarian efforts and provide medical aid in this growing emergency situation. And whereas the provision of an ambulance will pursue the goal of ensuring adequate conditions to provide urgent medical care and to further improve emergency response in the Ukraine. Whereas Section 41.4 of the city's procurement bylaw 2000-50 as amended states that, quote, the sale of surplus furniture, vehicles, equipment, stock, supplies, and other goods and material shall be made to the highest responsive bidder, and the sale shall be made in accordance with the provisions of this bylaw where applicable, end of quote. And therefore be it resolved that council waive subsection 41.4 of bylaw number 50 of, I'm not sure if that should be 200 or 2000 as amended, and approve the donation of 1 ambulance to the Embassy of Ukraine. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Item 21 on the agenda is a notice of intent from the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation to hold the annual general meeting of the shareholder at the council meeting scheduled for June 14th, 2023. Item 22, motion to introduce bylaws. Councillor Dudas.
That the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings be read and passed.
Is that carried? Item 23, confirmation bylaw. Councillor Dudas.
Confirmation bylaws.
That the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council.
Good afternoon. Bonjour à tous. My name is Kendra Titley and I will be your moderator. Je m'appelle Kendra Titley et je serai l'animatrice de ce point de presse. I will now invite each agency in alphabetical order to ask their questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. Par ordre alphabétique, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question de suivi. When asking your questions, please identify who your question is directed to, and if you are in council chambers, please use the microphone. Lorsque vous posez vos questions, veuillez indiquer à qui s'adresse votre question, et si vous êtes dans la salle du conseil, veuillez le faire au micro. We'll now start with, nous allons commencer par Elise Scura at CBC Ottawa.
Elise Scura, CBC Ottawa.
Thank you very much. So my question is for Claire Ferrer and Paul Levine. We were talking about homelessness today as council approved the recommendations from committee. And I just wondered if you could tell us kind of succinctly how critical is the need in the city's homeless community right now?
Thank you for, can you hear me? Thank you for the question. In Ottawa in 2020, the city of Ottawa declared a housing crisis and homelessness crisis. We continue to see an overflow of need and demand for both emergency shelter and affordable housing with supports. That I would say, and that sort of encompasses where we are right now in terms of our needs locally. We also, within our community and what we hear from the service providers who we work with, is in addition to an increased need, there's an increased level of acuity that they're seeing. And acuity refers to the various barriers and challenges that people who are requesting emergency shelter, for instance, are facing in their daily lives. And that includes increased mental health and mental illness, addictions, and of course, we have a toxic drug supply in our community that we're facing. So that together with the higher cost of housing, food, and other inflationary basic needs, items combined to create the crisis that we speak about.
And kind of reflecting the words about delegating authority in the recommendations, the motion, how important is it for the housing department to be able to move quickly if new funding is available to update the homelessness plan?
Thank you. The delegated authority that we have as staff is covered as part of the city's delegated authority bylaw. What we must do when we receive a substantive amount of funding annually from the province is bring that funding and the spending plan to council. And that is what we've done in this case. The authority that we have as staff enables us to respond quickly to changes in need, the needs that I've just described, and the ability to work with the sector, to consult, to understand, and to work with them on new and innovative solutions that might enable us to address those needs.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll now go to Leah LaRocque at CTV Ottawa.
Camera's already pointed at me.
I can't hide it. I'm sorry. Question for the mayor. Would you support a pay-as-you-throw bag and tag program in the city of Ottawa?
I've been listening to residents and I've been listening to councillors over the last few weeks since the discussion began. And I think we're all keeping an open mind about this. We need to divert more from landfill. We're facing some very expensive decisions about future solutions. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about what our options are on that. So I think, we're continuing to talk about it. I'm supportive of doing what we need to do to divert more waste from landfill. But I think there are still a few options in terms of what we can do to achieve that.
So would you support it as well?
Well, I think we're still trying to settle on what the right plan is. So there's, as you know, there's two pieces to this. One is what's the long-term solution, no matter how much we divert in the next few years, we are still going to have to either build another landfill or develop and invest in some other technology or some other solution for disposing of solid waste. And in the meantime, we will have, to do everything we can to divert garbage from landfill. And that's probably the more immediate decision that we'll have to make, obviously. So I'm keeping an open mind about that. I think there are some steps we need to take, but I'm waiting to hear more from the community and from councillors on what the right place to land is on that.
So my next question is for Mr. Gontier. With this motion, it's a bit of a process question. With this motion going forward now to look at technologies, what happens now with the debate about bag and tag at committee and that stream that's going forward? And just give me a.
Thank you for the question, Leah. So the two issues are really complementary. One doesn't supersede the other. One is focused, the one that's coming in June is really focused on resident behavior related to increasing diversion. The motion that was presented was more around the end product. So once we're dealing with the end waste or composition, basically, how do we deal with that? Recognizing that we have a landfill that is coming to the end of its life, and we need to be planning for that next cycle. So for me, and as the mayor indicated, they're two important discussions, and they're very much complementary.
Thank you. Nous allons maintenant à Charles-Antoine Gagnon, à la 3.
Hi. Will you send a letter to Queen's Park regarding Madame Troster's motion on Bill 5 and councillors who behave badly?
Do you want me to answer in French or English, or just oui?
Oh.
Oui. I support that. I support that bill, Bill 5. I think it's reasonable and appropriate. Je pense que c'est raisonnable. Alors, j'espère que le législature.
I hope that Queen's Park accept the motion from Councillor Troster. I forgot my second question. It concerns the landfills. How important it is to find a solution to the landfills that we have right now. You need to find a solution you need a solution for the landfills that are at their end of cycle. Yes, it is very important. We need two solutions. First of all, a long-term solution. If it's not a landfill, it will be in the adoption of another technology such as incineration, or maybe another one. We're open to all these different options. On the short term, we need a solution for solid wastes. We want to make sure we better make a better use of the landfill that we have right now. Thank you so much.
Sure. So, I think this is a really important decision for council, and I think it's good that we're taking the time and considering all our options. And we have two solutions that we need to find. One is the long-term solution of what's going to happen to garbage 10, 12 years from now. Where is it going to go? And I'm open to all the options for that. And I want to see what the pros and cons are of each of the potential solutions. And then more immediately, obviously, we have to divert more from landfill so that we are prolonging the current landfill site and putting off as long as possible the significant costs that will be associated with another solution. So I'm open to the discussion, and I'm looking forward to reaching a conclusion on the best way forward for residents and for the city, so that we're not making things too complicated or difficult for residents, but we are incentivizing diversion from landfill, and that we are making sure we're not sending too much to landfill. So clearly what we have now, where there's a 6-bag limit and it's not really enforced, is not the way to go going forward. So we need to find something that will work and that is not too much disruption for residents.
Thank you. We'll go to Claire Crawford at the Ottawa Citizen next.
Now my official question. This would be for Mr. Gontier. Can you elaborate a bit about the expected length, lifespan of the trail road dump? When the soonest it might be closed, and how long you could prolong it if there's more diversion?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. The current estimates are 2036 to 2038. Is basically when we expect to reach the capacity of the existing landfill. So as part of the solid waste master plan is looking for 30 years out to say, okay, how are we going to be managing waste in the city of Ottawa? Part of that is basically how do we try to extend as much as we can the life of the existing asset that we have before we start to look at other alternatives, regardless of technology, whether it's another landfill, whether it's an incineration or waste to energy. So when we look at the time span required to even consider those options, we're often talking about 10 to 15 years from the time that we start the feasibilities to the time that they're running. There's key decisions that will have to be made.
As a follow-up question to Mayor Sutcliffe, I know that Councillor Hulubi's motion is just about all the options, but clearly incineration is maybe the prime one. And I know you weren't on council when Plasko was underway, but you certainly covered it as a journalist in that previous career. And I'm wondering if you have concerns about incineration yourself as a possible solution.
I know there are concerns and I'm aware of them. I haven't studied all the different options closely. There are pros and cons, obviously, to every potential solution and every form of technology. I think, Plasko, it's a shame that didn't work out. It didn't turn out to be a great deal for the city of Ottawa, but it was one scenario. And so I'm sure there are lots of different options and a lot of time has passed since then. So going forward, I think we have to look at what the best options are, what are people doing in other communities, and choose the option that's right for Ottawa.
Thank you. Nous allons maintenant à Nafi Alébert à Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, j'ai une question soit pour le maire ou pour
I have a question for the mayor or on the homelessness prevention program. If I understood, is that there's only one thing that allows you to distribute housing. I didn't hear the last part of your question. I understand now there's only one thing that allows you to use the money based on the priorities of the city. Yeah, thanks for the question. About the funding for homelessness prevention, we're referring to city funding for homelessness that's been consolidated so that there's a better fund management and that we can better meet the needs of the population. And the 20 millions from the province, I think you mentioned that yesterday. Will that come with the announcement this afternoon? I'll ask the mayor to answer this question. Well, we'll have more to say this afternoon about the province funding. Maybe you can explain what the needs are now to prevent homelessness in Ottawa. Well, thank you. As we said earlier, the needs have increased a lot in Ottawa. As for people that live alone, there is more than before the pandemic. And for families now, there's an increase of 366% above the system's capacity. Of course, we have critical needs in the city, and any money will help to find a solution. Thank you.
This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you.